In this video I'll be taking you through the pre-flight checks and engine start procedure before taxiing and taking off from here at RAF Valley, providing an introduction to the many custom systems on board our aircraft and a flavour of the over 200 exterior and cockpit custom sounds. Let's jump into the cockpit and get started on the first checklist. We're going to be flying the aircraft solo from the front cockpit, so we need to spend a few seconds configuring the rear cockpit before flight. We can move into the rear cockpit by selecting the rear pilot option from the camera window. We'll start the checks on the left console, making sure the engine start switch is set to on. The tailplane standby trim cover is down. The anti-skid switch is set to on. The standby UHF switch is set to main. The landing gear transfer button is pushed in, providing control of the gear to the front cockpit. The flap selector is set to pupil, which also provides control to the front cockpit. The lights are all switched off, and the oxygen selector is set to on. We can now jump back into the front cockpit to carry out the rest of the initial checklist. We confirm that the landing gear selector is set to down and we have 3 red lights. The 2 battery switches are set to off and the oxygen selector is set to on. We can now carry out the strapping in checklist. First we'll close the canopy to reduce outside noise by pulling the handle and then closing the latch. We can now switch off the rudder pedal lock. We can now check both of the aircraft battery voltages. First we start by turning on battery 1 and confirming a minimum of 23 volts and cancelling any CWS warning sounds. And confirm that there's adequate voltage on battery 1. We'll now switch to battery 2 to carry out the same test. That also has adequate voltage, so we can now switch on both of the aircraft batteries. Moving across to the right instrument panel, we can switch on the navigation light and both of the anti-collision lights. Moving down to the CCS panel, we confirm that the amp selector is set to normal, and we confirm that the parking brake is pulled to on. We can now run through the internal checklist. Select the LP cock to on, confirm that the engine start switch is set to off, switch on the fuel pump, confirm that the pitot heater is set to off, confirm that the tailplane standby trim cover is down, and that the ignition switch is set to normal. We'll now check the throttle has full and free movement. For confirming that the HP cock is off. Confirm that the anti-skid system is switched off. The standby UHF switch is set to main. And we confirm that the brake pressures are normal, so we can see here that we have brake pressure as the parking brake is set to on. Moving up to the left instrument panel, we can confirm that neither the flap or undercarriage standby handles have been pulled. We can confirm that the landing gear indicator shows 3 greens now that we have electrical power. We can confirm that both batteries show charge, that the flap position indicator is selected up and that is matching the position indicator. We can then switch on the UHF radio by setting it to both. And then we can move to the centre instrument panel, confirming that the DGI has no flags shown, that the turn and slip indicator also has no flags shown. We can then reset the accelerometer or G meter. We can confirm that the main attitude indicator flag is shown and that the HSI flags are shown. On the AHRS control unit we can select slave mode, and we can make sure that the latitude has been set to our current latitude. We can now test the ILS marker light and confirm that UHF power is selected to normal. We can confirm that the main altimeter flag is shown and that the standby attitude indicator is erect with no flags shown, and that the standby instrument power switch is set to normal. On the right instrument panel we can confirm that the oxygen caption light is out and that we have sufficient oxygen quantity for the flight, and we have oxygen flow. We can also confirm that we have sufficient fuel for the flight, and that the rotation and GTS indicators are both black. We can now test the CWP, confirm that all lights illuminate and the audible warning is heard. We can now confirm that lighting is selected as we require, and we'll turn on some of the instrument lighting here. We can now move to the right console, confirming that the CCS panel is set as required. We can then switch on the VHF radio. Moving back along the right console, we can switch on the air conditioning, confirm that the temperature control switch is set to auto, and we can set the IFF transponder to standby mode, confirming that the test pass is shown. We can switch on the TACAN receiver and the ILS receiver. We're now ready to start the engine, so we can run through the pre-start checks. We move the engine start switch to the on position, and we confirm that the anti-collision lights are set to on. We can now begin the start process by pressing the relight button on the front of the throttle lever. This starts the GTS, and once the GTS is running and at an idle RPM, the GTS indicator will show green. With the indicator now showing green, indicating that GTS is ready, we can move the engine start switch to the start position and then release it. The engine now begins to spool up and the rotation indicator shows green. Once the indicator is showing green and the RPM has reached approximately 15 to 20%, we open the HB cock by moving the throttle lever to idle. The RPM continues to increase and we monitor both RPM and TGT. At 45% we confirm that the GTS and rotation indicators both show black, confirming a successful engine start and shutdown of the GTS. Once the RPM stabilises at approximately 50 to 55%, we can confirm that only the hydraulic number 2 and skid CWP captions remain illuminated, and there are no engine fire warnings. We can now confirm that the flight controls offer full and free movement on the hydraulic number 1 system alone. With that confirmed, we can now press the hydraulic number 2 reset button to pressurise the second hydraulic system. Once that system is pressurised, the hydraulic number 2 CWP caption goes out. We can now confirm that the electrical system CWP caption lights are out and only the anti-skid system remains illuminated. We can now work through the after start checklist. We start by confirming that the trims are all set to neutral. That's the tail plane on the centre instrument panel and the rudder and aileron on the left console. We can now test the air brake, and to do this on the ground we have to move the air brake test switch to on, and then we can use the air brake switch located on the throttle lever or the standard control assignment and confirm that the air brake indicator shows white, confirming that it's extended. We can then retract the air brake, confirm that the indicator shows black, and then switch off the air brake test. Now switch on the pitot heat. We can select the flaps to mid position and confirm on the indicator that mid has been achieved. We can carry out a control check for full and free movement. Confirm that the ground equipment is removed. And we can confirm that the hydraulic and brake pressures are within limits. We can confirm again that the oxygen contents is sufficient for the flight and that there's adequate flow, and that the canopy is locked. We can now check the flight instruments. We can confirm that the altimeter barometric pressures have been set, and we can carry out a quick test of the primary altimeter. We can confirm that there are no flags shown on the primary instruments, and that the primary attitude indicator is erect with no flags. We can confirm that the AHRS is synced, and we can switch on the IFF transponder. We're now ready to begin taxiing to the active runway. We can switch on the landing taxi lamp, switch on the GPS unit, and release the parking brake. We can now slowly increase RPM to start the aircraft rolling. Once the aircraft is rolling, we can carry out a quick brake check. Once we're positioned at the runway holding line, we can run through the before takeoff checks and runway checks. We confirm that the trims are set to neutral. Pitot heat is on. We can switch on the anti-skid system and confirm that the caption light has extinguished from the CWP. We confirm that the fuel is adequate for the flight and that the flaps are correctly set to mid. We can check that the lights are set as required and we'll turn on the strobe lights. And confirm that landing light is on. Also check that the IFF is set as required. And the altimeters are set as required. Once we're lined up on the runway ready for takeoff, we can hold the aircraft on the wheel brakes and apply full RPM and confirm that the brakes hold. Releasing the wheel brakes, we can start the takeoff roll keeping the aircraft straight down the runway using a combination of differential braking and rudder inputs. With a positive rate of climb, we can raise the landing gear and the flaps before reaching the 200 knots max limit. Confirming that the CWP remains clear of any warning captions, we have completed the after takeoff checks.